do like 10 of those a day.
So they just do wardrobe changes in
Yeah,
between
I mean, they do a
episodes?
week. I know they do a week, and they just change the wardrobe out.
Well, we're going to have to figure that out.
I always
because
wanted one of those Dalmatian dogs. Remember those?
The ones with the spots are the spots that you add to the dog.
No, the ones with the spot. They used to have one of those for like $75 if you had some leftover money. When they used to buy stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, hold that thought for just a second.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new edition of the podcast, All the Best Words. My name is Matt Murphy, and I say all the best words.
I'm Cameron Smith. I write all the best words.
And together we are all the best words.
I know words. I have the best words.
This is All the Best Words with Matt Murphy and Cameron Smith.
It's a podcast that drops 3 or maybe even 4 times a week. It is an easy, convenient bite of information, knowledge, entertainment, excitement, and I'm here for it.
Me too. I'm ready to get straight into the words, Matt.
I think that's what the people want. So if you're new to the concept, I bring a word, Cameron brings a word. I don't know what his word is. He doesn't know what my word is. And then we discuss these words as it applies to topics of the day, news of the day, international, national stories. And so, Cameron, without further ado, what do you got?
Well, my word, Matt, is caterwauling. It is, yes, you heard me, caterwauling. It is all this caterwauling. An easy way to think of it is just the sound that a cow makes, when it's been hit by a truck. It's this type sound. That sound over due process. We have seen the political left, every time the Trump administration issues an executive order, takes any action, anytime DOJ takes any action, say, due process. We are denied due process here. This person, can you see the court ruling here? Due process was denied. What they don't seem to understand is the fact that we're in court and we're having rulings is evidence that due process is working. Due process is a process. It's not an outcome. And if we want to wait for the executive branch to get permission from a federal judge before they do anything, we're going to be waiting a long time. Joe Biden, for example, you may remember this student loan forgiveness thing that he decided to do. Mm-hmm. He said, well, I have the authority to do it, and dadgummit, come on, man, I'm going to do it. And then he said, here's where we're going. We're going with it.
Jack.
Yeah, we have full control to do this. Well, as it turned out, that due process ended up with the Supreme Court saying, no, you don't have legal authority to do it. And just like that, when the Trump administration does things, it makes the argument that the administration has such and such constitutional and legal authority. They take action, and then they get sued. That's how the process works.
That is due process.
Right. And then the courts sort it out, and then ultimately we get a final ruling, sometimes at the Supreme Court, and wow, it's working. So due process. Caterwauling is my word. Due process is the concept.
Well, no, I love it. It reminds me of the case that comes to mind. Remember George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin? Mm-hmm. And after that case was decided, people were walking on the streets screaming, no justice, no peace. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, you just saw justice occur in terms of our system. Is our system perfect? Of course it's not. But that was the process. That was the justice that you say that you seek. Justice does not equate to outcomes. The other thought that comes to mind is the difference between equality and equity, right? Mm-hmm. All right. I think most everyone in the United States of America wants equality. But now Democrats have shifted to this idea of equity, which means equality of outcome, right, not equality of opportunity. So, I mean, I think the same applies for what they're going for. When they say due process, they mean, I mean, you hit it. They mean they want an outcome that is favorable to their position or ideological point of view, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously the Trump administration, are they pressing the boundaries on what they can accomplish through executive action? Of course they are. They feel like it is necessary to roll back some of the Biden administration era executive orders. Plus, they want to do what they want to do. Do they expect lawsuits? Of course they do. Have they gotten them? In abundance, sure. They have gotten them. And just this past week, the courts have ruled in favor of the Trump administration's ability at least to do this and to insist that the political left, that they follow due process in the proper way, at least in the case of the court's determination that, no, you can't come to Washington, D.C. to file all these cases because you get favorable judges over here. You got to go to Texas, where these people were detained, or Louisiana, where these people were detained. So, no, I agree with you. Justice does not mean that you get found not guilty all the time.
Right. And I know this is going to shock you, Matt, but presidents of all political persuasions think they have a lot of power to do stuff. In fact, we can count on that. The executive branch is going to find a justification for what it wants to do. It's not quite Ron Swanson with the I can do what I want, but basically it's the job of the staff of the president to say, here's the justification for your policy priority, and to put it forth in the courts. And that's good. That's fine. We want an executive branch that takes action. In fact, for too long, we've had executive branch in Biden's administration that was just kind of a malaise. It was just inertia.
A little sleepy.
A little sleepy.
A little sleepy.
I like the fact that the Trump
Tired.
administration is trying to do things differently. It probably doesn't have all the authority it thinks it does. That's part of due process.
Well, and the old phrase, power abhors a vacuum, right? So if the Congress is not going to step up and take over its role as the legislative body, the executive branch is going to extend and flex its muscles and, push out its elbows to the point that the judicial branch, as a check, tells them that's enough.
Yeah, what if I told you the system actually works pretty well? With that, Matt, what's your word?
My word is illegal.
The word's illegal, or it's illegal for us to know what it is?
Oh, no, I understand your confusion. My word is not illegal to say. My word is actually illegal. And it kind of goes along with part of the due process conversation. So there's been a lot of conversation about how Donald Trump has the ability to round people up who are here illegally and not give them their due process, according to the political left, when we begin the process of sending them back to their countries of origin. And I'm fascinated that a lot of people in the United States of America don't seem to understand the difference between human rights, American rights, or constitutional rights, and how sometimes you can be a human being in the United States of America and not have all of the basic rights that the Constitution guarantees extended to you because your presence in the country is fundamentally illegal. And so that doesn't mean that you don't get a hearing before a judge. And I think the Supreme Court established that.
Yes.
The Supreme Court said, look, you got to give them a hearing. They got to go before a judge. And to me, what the Supreme Court was indicating is you need to answer a few basic questions. Is this person who you say this person is, and did they come to the country illegally or not? And if the answer to those questions are yes, they are who we think they are, and yes, they came into the country illegally, that's the extent of due process because of the illegal nature of their entry. Now there are some, there's some minutia that might affect that, like asylum claims or whatever. But it's fascinating that we've gotten to a point where a lot of our friends on the political left seem to be arguing that if you get here and you are here, then congratulations, you get to stay here. You've made it. And that's just not how the process works. My word is illegal.
Yeah, and I think the Supreme Court, as you mentioned, did say the Trump administration wanted to move fast. I understand that. The Supreme Court basically said the detainees must have an opportunity to challenge their deportation that's reasonable. Okay, fine. I think that's the kind of thing that, again, due process is working. It is there. But, yeah, the underlying factors still exist. And so the idea of someone being here without any legal status, getting involved in criminal activity or otherwise, and saying, well, I get to stay here now, is kind of strange. And when I started looking into some of the details, we're seeing final orders of removal. That means you've had your due process. There is a existing final order of removal, and then you're still roaming around the United States. Once that order's in there, we need to go, right? You've had your chance. You've had your hearing. You've had the ability. This formal order has been entered, and it needs to be respected. And this goes back to the point of we know this conduct is unlawful, and we haven't enforced the law. And now people are shocked that the administration is starting to do that.
I'm a little surprised that the Trump administration has managed to do this in the way that they have. You're right that they're going at a speed that makes some reasonable people a little bit uncomfortable because, and I do think we touched on this a little bit. If you make a mistake, I mean, the political left is obviously against you here. That's the nature of the left versus the right. But you've got a lot of people in mainstream media that want to see Trump to fail. And if you hand them little victories, they're going to highlight those victories and they're going to exploit those victories. In other words, if you make mistakes about this person or that person, that you've deported erroneously. So I'm not suggesting that, you have to be right 100% of the time, but you got to try to be right 100% of the time when it comes to these deportations. That doesn't mean that we don't have to go fast. I think the way that they've done it, saying, look, we are going to start with people that not only broke the law coming here, but are currently breaking the law while here or broke the law in their countries of origin before they got here. These are established criminal elements. And the country's going to get behind you on this. And the country has demonstrated that they've gotten behind them on this.
Yeah, but you also don't want to lose the argument of even if you're not a hardened criminal, if you're here without status, you're still engaging in unlawful behavior. And that is completely lost on a lot of our friends on the left that said, hey, well, see, look, this person, they were caught up in this, but they weren't a gang member. They weren't
but still.
Right. They're still doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and there's consequences for that.
Well, and I don't think the left likes that the Trump administration, through the Homeland Security Department, they're trying to reset the goalposts because I think the left tried to shift the goalpost to, hey, if you come here and you're doing work that the rest of America doesn't want to do,
right,
and and you're being law-abiding while you're here and you're a good person, well, then you should get to stay. And that's not the lawful way that you enter the United States of America. And we're kind of reestablishing. We understand that we haven't followed the law for the last 40 years, but, we're going to follow it now.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it.
With that, we're out of words.
Those are our two words for today. It's caterwauling and illegal. And we'll see you next time on All the Best Words.